Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. My name is Annie Armstrong, and I'm a PhD student in the Department of Natural Resources at Cornell University, and I work in the Civic Ecology lab with Professor Marianne Krasny. And so today I'm going to be talking about our climate change, science, communication, and action massive open online course. And I'll be talking about sort of the background for why we do MOOCs in the Civic Ecology Lab, a little bit about what MOOCs are and the approaches to MOOCs, the goals and the objectives of this specific climate change MOOC and how extension is involved. And then at the end, I'd really like to think, I hope we have time to have some reflection on how the MOOC can better serve the extension audiences that it was meant to support in the first place. So getting started, just a little bit of background about me. As I said, I'm a PhD student here. My master's research here was on climate change communication and translating climate change communication research to environmental education practice. And my professional background is in environmental education. I have another master's in environmental interpretation and worked for a while in Virginia at a residential environmental education center as the education director there. So that's kind of the perspective that I come from. But really happy to be back in the Finger Lakes region. So, okay, first things first, what is a MOOC? A MOOC, or massive open, is a massive open online course, and we'll go through each of these elements. So the first is it's massive. There are hundreds to thousands of students enrolled in the course, and we have an international audience. So these are hundreds of students from countries all over the world. In general, MOOCs are free, or they can have rolling registration, and a lot of them have open content, so you can access them at any time. They're online. Some of them occur synchronously, so there are webinars where you meet at specific times during the course and have direct interaction. Or maybe if they're not webinars, then you have chats that happen at specific times. They can be asynchronous, where everything is done on the student's own time, and it's all pre-recorded lectures and readings, and there's nothing synchronous about it. Nobody's doing anything at the same time. And sometimes there are even local groups that will form as part of the MOOC, people who meet together face-to-face to do the online course together. And in terms of the course structure themselves, you might get a certificate or their badges. You can earn for some of them you can earn credits. Some of them you get feedback for your final project. Some of them you don't get any feedback. There may be specific start and end dates, or there may not be. So there's just a really wide variety, a lot of different flavors of MOOC. And actually, if you've ever taken a MOOC, if you want to just put in the chat if you've had any experiences with MOOCs, I'd love to know that. Some of the common MOOC platforms that you might have heard of are Coursera, which was started by Stanford University, edX, started by Harvard and MIT, and a private one, Udacity. And the initial goal of MOOCs was really to democratize education so that you could be anywhere in the world and receive and listen to a Stanford lecturer and receive a Stanford kind of education. It hasn't really turned out that way. It turns out that most people who take MOOCs are actually already well-educated and white. So we're working really hard in the Civic Ecology Lab to kind of buck that model and engage as diverse audiences as we can. There are a couple other different ways of thinking about MOOC approaches. There are connectivist MOOCs, where everything is really designed, where there's no real expert there may be there's a course organizer, but the students are all leaders and the leaders are all students. And the content is co-designed and co-created throughout the period of the MOOC. Maybe you're producing wikis or other kind of collaborative digital media projects. There are XMOOCs, and these are kind of what you might think of if you can say a MOOC is traditional. This would be a traditional MOOC. And these are where you have an expert who has pre-recorded a series of lectures, and you receive that content, and there's no real interaction or feedback between you and that expert. The Civic Ecology Lab's approach is a little bit of a hybrid between that, where we do have these pre-recorded lectures and a preset syllabus and content, but we really emphasize discussion and dialogue, and we'll adapt our approach, even as the course goes along. And we do this through a series of ways that I'll talk about as we go through the presentation. And if I can advance, let's see. Down here. So here now a little bit about the climate change MOOC in particular. So the Civic Ecology Lab has done started doing online courses. I guess this isn't about the climate change MOOC in particular, I'm sorry, but it's leading up to that. The Civic Ecology Lab started doing online courses as part of an environmental education EPA capacity grant for building environmental education capacity, and part of that was doing online courses for environmental educators. And Marianne Krasny, my advisor, just became really interested in MOOCs as this powerful tool for professional development and outreach. So these are some of the, through the EE Capacity project, they did a lot of smaller courses where people they'd have 25 people who would work on a book together, for example, and then publish a digital book at the end of the project. For the climate change course, obviously this is a massive open online course, a little bit different than that. And our course team consists of Marianne Krasny in the Department of Natural Resources, Mike Hoffman from Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions, Alishan Chatterchan from Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions, and then Jonathan Schultz from the Department of Communication here. And then also Mike, Allison, Jonathan, and I are the main lecturers in the course. But we also have a great advisory team who helped direct the development of the course with a lot of folks from Cornell Cooperative Extension, as well as University of Maine Cooperative Extension and the Northeast USDA Climate Hub. And then we're in the Civic Ecology Lab, we also are doing research right now on online courses and trying to develop best practices in online pedagogy, and really interested in how people connect and network through these online courses and how their practices change over time if their practices change over time as a result of the courses. So Yue Li is a postdoctoral researcher in our lab, and she has brought this China connection. And so we have, as I said earlier, about half of our students, or I did not say that, that was in a separate presentation today. About half of our students in our MOOCs are actually from China, and many of those are university students. And Yue has been instrumental in bringing them to the table. We also have this really fun massive open online course teaching assistant program with undergraduates here in the lab, and the undergraduates facilitate social media discussion, they facilitate edX discussions, and they also answer questions on student final projects. And then they themselves right now are working on some of their own digital media products that they will present to the Civic Ecology Lab's MOOC participants from a variety of the MOOCs. Sorry. Our objectives for the climate change MOOC were climate literacy. We wanted people to be able to network, and we wanted people to take some kind of action as a result, or at least plan to take an action through the course. The initial audience was extension educators and volunteers, and really the initial goal was to create a common language in extension for discussing climate change, for thinking about how to best talk about climate change with the really wide variety of stakeholders that you work with, and just to make sure that everybody was kind of on the same page with this very basic background in climate change science communication, and then what kind of actions are available for different branches of extension to take. But we decided that since we had it, and the Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions is really interested in building climate literacy in general on Cornell's campus and in New York State, that we would open the online course to anyone interested in learning about climate change. And that resulted in us going with a course announcement going viral last September when we first ran it, and we wound up with an international audience that we didn't really expect to have at first. So it's fantastic, but it definitely meant that the course took on kind of a different flavor than we anticipated at first. And we've offered it in September, and we offered it in January, and we made some adjustments in January to better suit that international audience. And now I think we need to think again about, okay, well, how is the course really supporting the extension audience that it's intended to support? Here's the general syllabus for the general outline of the course. The first week is all about climate change science, and we have pre-recorded lectures from Mike Hoffman and Jonathan Lambert, who was previously with KICS, the Cornell Institute for Climate Smart Solutions, on very basic climate change science and what are some of the most commonly talked about climate change impacts, like impacts to water supplies and food supplies and public health. The second week is on climate change communication with background information on the sort of the social psychology of why people, some of the barriers to taking action on climate change, as well as just a general overview of what public opinion on climate change actually is in the US and around the world. And then the third week is thinking about, okay, well, what are some of the general solution areas that we think about? What are the mitigation solutions? What are the adaptation solutions? And then the fourth week is about, well, now that we have that background, what are the actions that people can take within those kind of solution areas? And the fourth week is there aren't any lectures and students are just working on their action plans. Just in terms of course logistics, we use edX Edge, and this is our learning management software. This is where all of the general course information goes. Students take a certain, I think 7 quizzes to receive a certificate, and they're very easy quizzes. You can take them as many times as you want. Basically just a way for students to receive immediate feedback and on their learning. And then there's a required discussion forum. We have pre-recorded video lectures and assigned readings. We usually have one very accessible, or we try to make it accessible, assigned required reading, and then a couple different optional readings that offer deeper dives into the topic. And then we have run bi-weekly, or we run webinars twice a week and have those recordings up there. A lot of the more dynamic interaction in the courses happens on social media platforms. Facebook for most of our students, but then for the Chinese students, they can't use Facebook, and so they use WeChat instead. And then in January, we had I think 450 students register from countries all around Africa, and they were drawn to WhatsApp. So they formed several different WhatsApp groups associated with the course. If you've ever been part of an online course before, you may have found the discussion forum kind of sterile and difficult to enter. If it doesn't feel as much like an interaction as something like Facebook does, where you can really get instant feedback at sometimes from instructors and other students. Much more easily searchable. It just seems to be a much more dynamic place for discussion. This last January course, we had 828 active participants on our edX Edge site, and from 48 countries. And most of the students were from either the US or from China, but then we did have a lot, then the rest of the students were from these other 46 countries, which was really neat. And just in terms of the how the content is structured, I'm moving things around on my screen here. We have the pre-recorded lectures, and then to help with accessibility for the lectures for our international students, we have Spanish, Chinese, and English subtitles. The readings are a mix of open source academic articles, news media, and gray literature, research reports. And I'm seeing this chat. Oh, thanks, Celeste. So Celeste is just chatting about the Facebook interactions. Yeah, a lot of people are hesitant at first, and we can maybe touch on that at the end about Facebook, because maybe you're concerned about privacy, or for whatever reason you don't like Facebook, and especially given recent revelations about the way data is used on Facebook. There's good reason for that. But it works really well for discussion. And then with the discussions, we ask frequently, they're frequently application-based, and we're working on making them a little bit more involved, and so that they make people think a little bit more critically about the material. But generally it's about, well, okay, we've done this reading, how can you apply that to your work? And then the webinars offer some chances to learn a little bit more about one of the course topics. And really they're an opportunity to interact directly with one of the course instructors. we also do student presentations, and plan to do more of those in the next course offering, because they are super successful, and it's just really inspiring to hear presentations on climate change action from students all across the world. Just going to check the chat here again. Oh, sure. So with the webinars, every now and then we try these in Zoom. You can do this cool thing where you set people up into small groups and send them, and you can how can you, I'm like forgetting exactly what the word in Zoom is, but you send people into their own little Zoom rooms, and so you can then ping them with guided questions. So even if there are 100 people on the webinar, can assign 6 people to a Zoom discussion room, and you can be having a small group discussion in that Zoom room where you don't see any of the other participants or see any of their chats. And then as the leader of the webinar, you bring everybody back and can kind of have reflection on the small group discussion. So we do that every now and then. There are some technological barriers to do that. I think you have to do it several times before people get it. Although I think Celeste has done it more successfully in some of her work than I have.
But Annie, I'm just going to vocalize here.
Thanks, Celeste.
It was Annie who was willing to take risks a lot more frequently than I am. So I saw she was like, "Okay, we're going to use these small group breakouts," and I was like, "I've never done that before." And these people are from all over the world, and they don't know each other at all. But man, it was really cool because you're broken up into small groups and talk to each other. And it did take a couple of minutes for people to like actually go, "Oh, I can talk. Oh, I can talk to other people, and I guess they're going to listen, and we can have a conversation, and we have things in common." And so talk about breaking down barriers and making connections. The research says that when we talk to each other, things actually stick better. And it was excellent. I was really glad that you did that, and I want to encourage other people to try that. We can't do that in the webinar format of Zoom, but anytime any of us can host a web meeting, and you can make use of that. So take a risk. It really works. So good job, Annie.
Oh, thanks, Celeste. Okay. Hang on, folks. There you go. So a little bit more. This is just what the course website looks like. This is on edXEdge. You have this is one of our pages where you have a guiding question for the course module, the lecture, and then links to discussion in that. And this is so. Oops! Oh my goodness! I'm sorry, folks. So this is the aspect of the course. Our goals are some of the course objectives. We're hoping to build climate literacy. So this is one of the. So this aspect of the course is building climate literacy through just content delivery, essentially. But then, another one of our objectives is networking, and so the discussion forums on edXEdge help with that. So you can see this is a screenshot of the introduction posts. We always ask people to do introduction posts for a couple different reasons. One, it's just nice to know who everybody is, but the second thing is that it's actually been shown that it helps people feel more comfortable in the forum. It reduces what's called social identity threat, especially if you're an international student and not very comfortable in English, or maybe you're not comfortable with the technology, or feel a little bit threatened or afraid of participating in such a large group. Asking a basic introduction question can really reduce the fear that people have in engaging in the discussions. People use the course they do on the social media sites. They use the course for searching for resources. So this is one person who was looking for a carbon footprint calculator for her students. And so this is both building networks and helping build literacy about climate change resources. And if you actually clicked on the resource and looked at the carbon footprint calculator, then about climate change itself. People also share the work that they're doing. So this is one of our Cameroonian students who was showing some of his community development work in his city. And so through this, you can actually see other people taking action. And there's some research that suggests that just seeing people do something will motivate you to do it as well. So there's, a hope that as you see other people taking action, especially in different and challenging contexts across the world, that'll motivate other people to also think about their actions that they can take in their area. And you can see there's, 10 other people like this. There's some feedback here from myself and from another student. So this is just an example of building a support group around climate change action through the course. We try and give a lot of feedback, especially through social media, on climate change, on their final projects, which are action projects. So one of the ways we do this is asking people to share in one specific post about their course project ideas. And this is a really great way to get peer feedback, because a lot of people will see it. Everybody links to the same post. And you can see we have 79 comments. And I would say probably half of those are student comments and half of those are instructor comments. And again, people are using social media in the course to network, and we try really hard as instructors, and this is one of the key roles of the MOOC TAs and the instructors, is to help people find those connections. So here's a horticulture program manager from Extension, and I connected her with one of our extension specialists, which I'll get to in a couple minutes, Andy Christian Reuter, who worked with Lori Brewer on developing the Gardening in a Warming World curriculum. And so there's some networking that happened there. And then Annie Christian Reuter tapped her into the gardeners and horticulturists interest group that she had started. In terms of building additional connections, we really wanted to provide support for extension. And so we had 4 extension specialists, what we called extension specialists, in the September offering of the course, and 3 in the January offering, who offered more content-specific areas or expertise. So Annie Christian Reuter was the garden-based learning person, and so she set up a Facebook group for horticulture and horticulturists or people interested in gardening, and I think that was our most successful sort of spin-off group. Marilyn Wyman from Columbia and Greene counties actually in September did face-to-face meetings with folks in her county, where they would come and watch a video, one of the course videos or 2 of the course videos, and then have a discussion around that. And then they planned their action plans together and did a Trees for Tributaries planting together as a group as a result of coming together for the course. Laura Griffin McDermott from the horticulture, she's the small fruit and vegetable specialist, and she was our ag person, and she set up a Facebook group for folks who were more interested in agricultural topic areas. And she didn't have much actual interest in the Facebook group, but we did get some good email connections for her. So she had some good email conversations with students who had asked ag-related questions in the course. In September, we had some community groups. We didn't really do that. It's actually, from the instructor perspective, a lot of additional work, and sometimes it has really great payoff, and sometimes it doesn't have great payoff. So it's always a question at the beginning of a course whether we're going to promote community groups or not. But we have people who decide to be what we call community leaders, and they may set up an additional Facebook group. They may meet face-to-face with people in their city or their region. Sometimes the community groups are topic-based, and sometimes they're language-based. So in the September course, we had over 300 people register from the Philippines, which was fantastic, and they formed a Filipino Facebook group so they could discuss the course content in Tagalog. And that was a really active group. And then this last course in January, we had a small group of people from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, who were taking the course together as a group, and they formed their own Facebook group to share resources, but they also met face-to-face. Talked a little bit about the webinars already. My favorite thing that we did this last course, as I said earlier, was the student presentations, and I plan on doing that a lot more in the September offering, because it was just really, I think one of the reasons to go on the webinar is to meet people and interact in more of a personal way, where you actually get to interact in real time. And it is just, as I said earlier, really inspiring to hear students from all over the world talking about their climate change actions. I think one of our presenters this January is from Nigeria, and she had taken Al Gore's climate reality leadership training in the US last year, and then brought that back to her region in Nigeria and started doing climate change education programs on her own, not through any organization, in her local schools. And she also started, as part of that, she collects recyclables, sells the recyclables, and then uses that money to purchase trees. And seedlings, whenever she does a climate change education program in a school, she plants those seedlings with the children and talks about how they're climate change mitigation through afforestation. And it's just really inspiring. In terms of course outcomes, this is a little bit biased because the people who the people who tend to fill out our course evaluations are the people who have completed the course, and so they're likely the people who have actually enjoyed the course and who have gained something through it. But we like to see that most people who have filled out the evaluation have gained new ideas from the course. So this is just an example of some of the new ideas. I've learned that a person's identity can play a role in their perception of climate change. It's from our Climate Change Communication Week. This person says that it gave me a little extra information on climate change and its current and potential impacts, although the biggest thing I took from it was the push to make an action plan. And what we really like to see is that people are actually applying the course material to their personal or professional life. And just in terms of program evaluation, something that we need to follow up on that we haven't yet and haven't totally figured out how to is following up on whether people have continued working on their action plans or with their action plans after the course, a few months after the course. So as you can see, a lot of people who filled out the evaluation said they'd applied it to their PowerPoint or to their life. One person has already used the PowerPoint on gardening in a warming world and has been giving classes on this in a horticultural society meeting and has more presentations planned. And then this person says that it's not a specific idea that I've used, but I definitely found myself making decisions to reduce my emissions more while taking the course. And so the person took the bus to work a lot more during the duration of the course and hopes to continue to do so. And then as one of our goals was to have people network, this is just showing that people, this is not demonstrating that they formed any kind of long-lasting network, but certainly that people interacted with different individuals at least more than once during the course. So there was some personal online mediated personal interaction during the course. It wasn't just them receiving the content. I wanted to share a little bit about what kind of action plans people do. We emphasize that the action plans are meant to be actionable so that we don't want people to feel overwhelmed by them, and that they can be as simple as deciding to, as that one person did expressed in the survey, deciding to take the bus more often and making making a strategic action plan to do that. What are some of the challenges that are going to be involved in taking the bus more often, and how will you meet those challenges? But this is one in terms of, we had some people do some research-based action plans, so develop additional research ideas on, this is just one example, on the effects of deforestation and desert encroachment on agriculture in northern Nigeria as a result of climate change. Somebody who's really interested in composting as a climate change mitigation action, which it can be if it's done well, and developing policy around that in her community in Florida. Another person is this Gemstones and Climate Change Awareness. This is a student in Cameroon who wants to have people use green charcoal that's produced through compost and food waste rather than cutting down trees to make charcoal for energy. And then Youth to Action is an education program that works with teenagers to develop action programs in their communities. So there's a wide range of action plans that people have taken, from more collective to more individual. And I would say probably, as I've been going through our assignments or the action plans from this last course offering, the majority of them so far have been, the main outcome has been people just want their audiences to know more about climate change. And so climate literacy has been the main outcome that people are hoping to get from their action plan. There are, of course, challenges inherent in online learning. A lot of people wrestle with technology. We have a lot of people who, it's just, technology can be a barrier for a few different reasons, whether you're new to using edX or edX or Facebook. Maybe you have poor internet connectivity, and so it's really difficult for you to stream the videos, or you can't join the webinars because your internet connectivity is low. The other difficult thing as an instructor is maintaining instructor presence. So when you have 800 active students, how do you maintain an active presence in the course? And the MOOC TAs have been really helpful in that respect, because we have 5 or 6 more people who are responding to posts and helping with networking, etc. There's also, just as an instructor, it's rather it can be exhausting to there's like a constant flow of questions and comments on multiple platforms, and because it's an international audience, they're coming at all hours of the night. So you can open your email at 2 a.m. and somebody has just emailed you because it's 8 a.m. in Germany. So that can be, just as an reflecting on the sort of a toll on the instructor. That's one of the challenges that I've faced, and that I need to develop some better work-life balance methods when I'm running the MOOC. And then, so we had 277 people turn in final project plans for this last January offering, which was fantastic. Like, that's amazing. But that also takes a really long time to go through, and people deserve and would like more instant feedback, not instant, but feedback more quickly than sometimes we're able to give them on the project. So these are some of the things that we wrestle with consistently with our online learning courses. The next steps for the climate change course, so we're re-offering the course in September. We're re-recording the lectures so that they're going to be more professional looking. They were initially recorded using Panopto here at Cornell, but we're going to have them professionally recorded by the Center for Teaching Innovation. So they'll be a little bit snazzier looking. This says, I need to update this. So this says we'll offer mini grant to extension educators. I think I can't use that language. I've just heard from our admin assistant. This is funded through NIFA funding, and there are some limitations there. But one of the things that we're really hoping to do in September is to be able to provide some small funding to extension folks in New York State, in different counties, who would be interested in leading local groups and organizing 2 or 3 face-to-face meetings with people in their county who are taking the MOOC, so that we can offer, and really the goal of that is to offer people the opportunity to think more about, so if you're in ag, then think more about climate change related, climate smart agriculture and climate related agriculture topics. If you're in horticulture, then same for that. And so we're trying to support that those more content specific needs that extension folks have, that we can't really provide just with the very basic climate change science, communication, and action lectures in the course. When we're also trying to create a Cornell 1-credit undergraduate course on campus, so that the Cornell undergraduates would be taking the course online for credit while the rest of the MOOC was going. So we'd have Cornell undergraduates wrapped in there and participating as well. We do have some April webinars planned, and I'm going to have, the next slide is my contact information, so please email me if you happen to be interested in these. The first is about climate change displacement, which is the displacement of people as a result of climate change impacts. So this is going to be given by, her name is Ratchata Arpornsilp, and she's from Thailand. This is her specialty. She's a Hubert Humphrey Fellow at Cornell right now. And then April 26th, we'll be hearing from Dr. Josh Serra from the Department of Landscape Architecture at Cornell on his work on climate adaptive design in the Hudson Valley. He has a collaborative climate adaptation project in the Kingston area. He's working with the community to develop, to do some design along the Hudson to reduce flood impacts due to climate change. So this is my contact information, and if you happen to be interested in the Civic Ecology Lab's MOOCs, then you can go to civicecology.org. And I'd really like to open the, oh, I should have left that up for a second more. I'm gonna share my screen again. And I'd love to hear from you guys about just questions about the MOOC, or about if you have any thoughts on, what you would need as an extension associate to support a local network of people who would be taking the course, or what you would be interested in doing, whether this seems like it's a good way for extension to go. I'm really interested in your thoughts. And I'm going to start with answering Celeste's question about the teaching assistants. And take a sip of coffee first. So the MOOC TA program. We have five TAs this semester. We had 8 TAs last semester, and they are mostly undergraduates. They receive some training in cultural competence and in digital design and online pedagogy. And then we do some workshopping on just exactly how to craft a good post on social media for the courses, what a supportive post looks like versus what a post that might unintentionally offend somebody looks like. And they're taking this as a 4-credit opportunity for 2 to 3 credits. So they are supposed to be spending anywhere between 6 to 9 hours per week. And they can, as they use that time to look over the course content, spend time. They're assigned different times. Everybody takes a couple-hour time slot every week on on Facebook or WeChat, and a specific time or a specific day to look at the discussion forum. So they have kind of a few scheduled out tasks. And then they are responding usually with, we found that they get the most responses when they ask very general follow-up questions to people's posts. So if somebody shares their action idea, then if the MOOC TA follows up with, wow, this is really so cool, thank you so much for sharing so-and-so. I'm really interested in how you did X. I think that's so amazing. And then that's usually when we get a follow-up. We'll get a follow-up answer from the person and actually have some kind of discussion. The MOOC TAs have observed that if they post on a post that's already been responded to a lot, then nobody responds to them. It's like there's already too many people have responded, and so they don't get a response. They've noticed they get more responses on the posts that have less text in them. And if the post has a lot of text, it's like the person's already kind of gotten all they want out of the sharing, and they don't share more. Okay, Jackie. Celeste, I hope that answered your question. Do participants receive? Yes, I should have said that. They receive a certificate, and we go back and forth on what to call the certificates. We have a lot of conversations just in the lab about exactly how the certificates should work. So, in the past, we've awarded 2 different types of certificates, and what we call an achievement certificate for students who, let's say in the climate change course, have done they've done all the required quizzes, and then they've done their discussion questions, but they decided not to do a final project. So they would get an achievement certificate, and we equate that to about 10 hours of participation time. And then we also awarded what we called expert certificates, where the student would do that, plus they would do the final project. But there's some problems with the translation of expert in China, and actually I had somebody complain to me that she decided not to submit the final assignment and get an expert certificate because she really didn't feel like an expert. And so there was some feedback about how, well, you're really not an expert after 3 or 4 weeks of thinking about climate change. So for this last course, we're offering only one type of certificate. I'm calling it a certificate of professional development. And it's only for students who have done all of the course requirements, including the final project. And we still had 277 people out of the 828 who enrolled on edXEdge send their assignments in, which is a solid MOOC completion rate. So I was pleased with that. Um, so yeah, this is definitely a resume builder. And, we have a really wide variety of student types, everywhere from university faculty to people involved in government in different countries, to university students, to high school students who take it with their parents, which I think is really fun. I love that intergenerational approach. edXEd versus other technologies. So, plus about edXEd is it's free and Chinese students can access it. The downfall of edXEd is that it is really difficult to track discussion responses. So when we weren't working so much with Chinese audiences, we used Canvas. And Canvas is much easier as an instructor to track assignments and to track discussions as assignments. edXEd and edX in general really are not meant or designed for that kind of instructor feedback. And so that makes it really difficult as an instructor to just track people and get them their certificates in a timely manner. We actually don't even use edXEd for their project submission anymore. We use Qualtrics. Other questions or comments? Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. So in the, oh gosh, now I can't remember. We had between 200 and 300 people from extension, from cooperative extension or other extension groups in the September course, and we had many fewer in the September course. I don't actually have the numbers we had many more in the September course than for the January course, and I don't have the specific numbers for the January course. About half of, or more than a third of the overall students that we had in September were from New York, and a lot of those were from extension, or either as associates or volunteers. And the best represented group in extension that we have is horticulture. For whatever reason, master gardeners and horticulturists we've been, and in a meeting with those extension specialists, we're trying to figure out why that was, and thought maybe that there are some really direct applications that you can kind of easily put into practice with gardening and horticulture. So maybe that was one way. Or there's Lori Brewer's done a lot of work already with gardening as a warming world, and I know that Master Gardener is just has a strong base in New York. It was promoted through extension. We had promoted through extension. The extension specialists promoted it through their networks. It was promoted through extension in Maine, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, really all across the Northeast, and like all of the New England states and New York.
I was thinking e-extension.
E-extension.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that.
It's really hard to.
I see what you did there. Yeah.
To make that distinction.
No, I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think it may not have been.
All right, we should talk. That might be another option to get it directly into the hands of extension professionals.
Yeah.
Across the country. Well, we are just about at 11:45. We're at 11:44. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, Annie. I see your contact information here.
Yeah, I guess I just am. It's been a real pleasure running the MOOC. If you're a little worried about taking an online course or a little skeptical about it, I would highly recommend just signing up, and don't worry about. We say we charge $20 for it, but it's kind of a pay as you can. And if you're not sure about it at first, don't pay it first. Just check it out. It's a lot of fun, and if you're worried about climate change, I think a real hope booster, because you see all of these people connected in a global way addressing a global problem.
Yes. And so you're going to continue to run this particular MOOC, is that right?
Yeah, it'll be a 6-week course in September. So we're building it out a little bit more. And like I said, we'll be re-recording the lectures, adding additional readings, and are working on an ebook right now of the sort of finest examples of the action plans that have been submitted. Amy, that's a really great comment there on master gardeners and extension horticulture educators observing the effects of climate change and so are looking for solutions. Yeah, that's a really good observation.
Yeah. So in closing, I would just really recommend, if you have staff, volunteers, young people that may be interested in this topic, and even if you're a little hesitant about getting involved in a MOOC and what that might mean, yeah, Annie and company, they've done a lot of experimenting, and this is a fantastic. I really, like I said, I've been involved in the online world for a long time, and I was really hesitant about what a MOOC could do, but I really found it very engaging, interesting. Yeah, I would highly recommend the September course, and you can look in Extension Insider. We'll be promoting it, and I'm sure you'll get other feedback and promotions about it elsewhere as well. So thank you so much, Annie, and thanks to all the participants that were on board.
Thank you, Celeste. Thanks everybody who came, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the system conference. And Karen, I just answered your question in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't see it earlier. But yep, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful warm weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, Annie.
Yep, bye.